hearts aglow inside.
Well, welcome to the Tao of Kimball, the way of Delta Chi. My name is Gene Doris. I'm the Regent for Delta Chi's Region 9. And as you probably know, we have 22 chapters and colonies in the Mid-Atlantic states. I'm here to visit with you about a problem I see frequently with the recording of your chapter minutes or meeting report, or the famous CMR. This is a new way or a new approach for me, trying to use modern technology to reach out and share some of the problems I see. And this is the first of a series of steps like that I'd like to experiment with. So I'd like to invite you to give me feedback and let me know if this has been a helpful YouTube video or not. Your role as chapter secretary or C is likely the second most important role on your e-board. And for many savvy chapter politicians, it's often the springboard to becoming the chapter A. You're up in front of everybody every meeting and you have high visibility. Our international headquarters depends on the C's reporting in order to track both the growth and decline of chapters, as well as the payment of dues and associate member fees. Back in the day, I studied history as an undergraduate. So I also see the C as a historian of the chapter. The chapter meeting report, or the CMR you produce every week, is the story of your chapter. And it's the best source, if correctly constructed, of telling your successors about the highs and lows of your chapter experience. Many chapters have someone today who serves as a historian. If that's the case, that person should be reporting directly to you, the C. Now, your job today is comparatively easy. You have a standardized form, you fill it in, you send it electronic to the international headquarters. If you do it right, your regent, your BB, your ABJ chairman can all get a copy with just a single stroke on your keyboard. For that matter, you could also share it with all your brothers electronically. In the old days, for me, that's 55 years ago, we had to produce typed minutes on legal-size paper in triplicate using carbon copies. One copy stayed with the chapter and the other two were sent to Iowa City. As your regent, I depend on your CMRs in order to understand what's going on in your chapter. I'm looking for potential problem areas that the chapter might be encountering. It's not unusual for me to pick up the phone or send a text message to the chapter asking for details about a problem or issue that I saw in your CMR. IHQ, International Headquarters, uses your report to track membership and philanthropy. In fact, the CMR is probably the only tool Indianapolis has to know how many active brothers are a part of the bond and how many associate members have joined in a semester or academic year and have been initiated. There are, in fact, several staffers in Indianapolis who read each and every CMR for these details. The staff of the Delta Chi Education Foundation also tracks using the CMR. They're looking for how much money you've raised for Jimmy V, how many service hours you've contributed to your community. I think you could divide the CMR into three parts: a data section, a discourse section, and an additional comments area. The data and the discourse parts account for membership and maintaining the minutes of chapter meetings. Recording secretaries rarely use the third part, the so-called additional comments section, but it's a useful way to share information about what went on in the chapter outside the chapter meeting during the week in question. Let's talk about the data section first. The data section of the CMR collects information on membership of your chapter, as well as money and work contributed to philanthropy and public service activities. So when we're talking about membership, you're looking at brothers who've gone inactive, new associate members, members who've disassociated, members we're about to initiate, and changes in leadership. International Headquarters is concerned whether dues and fees are being paid, whether the chapter is following proper procedures in registering new members, and who are the new leaders of the chapter after election. This is the only tool IHQ has to track how many associate members join Delta Chi every semester. On the philanthropy side, IHQ and Education Foundation are particularly concerned about how much money is being raised for Jimmy V Foundation. IHQ views Jimmy V as the single most important element in our strategy for engaging in philanthropy and community service. Frequently, however, there's a disconnect between the numbers you report as a C and the amount of money the D transmits to IHQ for Jimmy V. We're still not clear what happens to that missing money, but it's a question you should be aware of every time you fill in an amount of money that you've raised. We also look at service, and in this, they're basically at headquarters calculating how many service hours your chapter completes in any one week. Many reporting requirements are connected to Delta Chi's strategic objectives. This reporting requirement is not doing that, but it's very, very focused on total hours. Now, let's look at part 2 of the CMR, the part I call discourse. All right. You should remember, again, that you're leaving a historical record, and anything that you say that's vague or lacks detail on what transpired is not going to be helpful to the reader, nor is it going to be helpful to people reading it 10 to 15 years later. So I've divided this discourse into 5 parts. First, there's a call to order. Second, there's an invocation. Third, a roll call. And finally, the approval of minutes. Second part are the reports, and that's simple. We have officers' reports, we have committee chairman reports. From there, we move to business. There, of course, is old business with actions that were carried over from a previous meeting. New business, things that are new or timely that need to be brought to everybody's attention. And finally, there's an adjournment, which includes announcements and a motion to adjourn. Now, during the opening of the chapter meeting, the presiding officer calls the meeting to order. It's immediately followed by what we would call an invocation. Now, an invocation actually has some religious overtones, and in many organizations, it's a prayer calling upon the moral authority of God to support the cause of our association. For Delta Chi, we're a non-sectarian organization, not a religious organization. Our higher purpose is found in our preamble, which states our values and our background and our history and where we want to take our organization. As a result, the preamble is often recited out loud at the beginning of chapter meetings. Now, let me warn you, as a recording secretary, a lot of people fill in that part of the CMR with what the preamble actually states. So it's a long extra bit to the CMR that's basically a waste of time and effort. It's fine to report that everyone joined together in reading the preamble or saying the preamble, but it's worthless to print the whole preamble. Now, a particular use in the opening is the recording secretary's roll call. This determines how many brothers are present and who's missing. For some chapters, which penalize brothers for non-attendance of chapter meeting, it's useful for the recording secretary to list those with unexcused absences. It's very important that we keep that record, and this is the only place where that record can be found. Now, in most organizations, the recording secretary often reads the minutes of the previous chapter minutes. And if approved, they're permanently recorded. As our minutes are sent almost immediately to IHQ, only a handful of chapters actually review the minutes from the previous meeting and seek approval of the previous set of minutes. That said, I think the best procedure might be for the recording secretary to send out copies of the minutes every week at the time he notifies IHQ of the minutes, and then at the next chapter meeting, ask if there are corrections or additions to the minutes. After the chapter meeting opening, the presiding officer moves to reports. In a chapter meeting, there are both officer reports and committee chairman reports. Here's the area where I have the most problem, and it's how you record these reports. First off, I really like to see full names. Usually officers' reports talk about first the officer report and then the committee report. Oftentimes, not oftentimes, but on occasion, you will find some C who thinks he's cute and he says, Mr. A reported this, Mr. B reported that, Mr. C said that. Still another likes to use first names. Neither of these methods work for me. I especially don't like first names because I find that too many brothers have the same first name nowadays. I am continually amazed in the choices that mothers make for their sons' names nowadays. Names that would have been unique 50 years ago, like Brandon and Jacob and Ryan and Ethan and Dylan or Dylan or Caleb, are quite common, particularly here in North Carolina. More than one brother often has what once might have been a very unique name. Moreover, officers frequently roll over during the school year, making it difficult to follow who's actually the current office holder. For this reason, I ask you to identify every officer and every committee chairman by their full name and title. For example, Chapter A, Liam Phillips reported blah, blah, blah. You got it? All right, let's talk about the reports. What about them? Do you think that if an officer has nothing to report, you need to write D, Bill Jones, no report? Again, that's a waste of time and a filler. If he has no report, the committee chairman has no report, the officer has no report, don't waste your time and energy saying no report. Now, what about the reports themselves? Where someone has something to share. Okay, make sure there's meat in your report. Tell the people what happened or what is going to happen. One Chapter A, for example, shared his future expectations. But then the C failed to share with us what the A said. So, future expectations, this is empty. Another F reported that no news is good news. And I agree, particularly with matters relating to risk management, no news is good news. But he could have shared with us the steps he took at whatever recent event there may have been, and he's referring to that no news is good news. Tell a story in here. In another case, a Chapter D announced a list of brothers who had not paid their dues. But you know, the C didn't even bother to record the names of those people that owe money. Again, a big waste. One of my biggest gripes is with athletic chairs who announce one week that there's a sporting event, but never report back what happened in the game, who won, what the score may have been, who was the star. Now, one of the things that really bothers me is the lack of consciousness about Robert's Rules of Order. How many times in a chapter meeting do you see a brother stand up and say, I make a motion. I make a motion to second. You cannot say make a motion. You can only say I move. I second the motion. It would be worthwhile for each one of you as C's to get a simple chart about motions and how to make them. It is the core of a good meeting to use Robert's Rules of Order. Now, another element that bothers me is the recording of vote tallies. If the vote on a motion is taken as a voice vote, then you note the motion passed by voice vote. However, brothers often ask for division or a roll call vote. In cases like that, please provide the roll totals. This is especially important in bylaw changes. In those cases, your bylaws frequently require that changes take a certain percentage vote greater than a simple majority. You also need to report the language of the changes, as your minutes are the official record of the action taken to create and amend bylaws. And let me add that, a point to that, and that is, if you have a motion on the floor, please write it out verbatim, because this again is a record of what you decided on. Now, that takes care of reports. The last element is what I call additional comments. Some Chapter Cs attach a brief summation of things going on in the chapter outside of the chapter meeting. In one case, the chapter had an emergency meeting, and they reported that they moved the initiation date in that. In other cases, a brother was elected a new student body president, and basically they used that additional comment section as a shout out. These are nice pieces that help add local color to your chapter history, and I encourage you to find opportunities to add elements like this when you're using this section. As many of you know, IHQ recently completed its new recording secretary or C training. This new workshop will be available in 2020 at the Regional Leadership Conference and later at convention. I urge all of you to sign up for the workshop and improve upon your reporting skills. Appreciate very much you listening, and if you have things to add, please share them back with me. Thank you.